Obviously, one of the biggest topics right now, and one of the things brands are facing, is the idea of content creation. I mean, there's no doubt that it's something that's become an integral part of any marketing campaign, and definitely here to stay, and something that a lot of brands are really embracing well and succeeding at, while others are kind of struggling. So put together, I think, a really excellent panel here of people that are really on the front lines right now, seeing what's some of the best practices and implementing those. So just wanted to introduce at the end is Abe Kislevitz, a senior production artist at GoPro. You can't have this panel without GoPro around, who invented the video selfie category, pretty much, to get the going. Abe, as part of his job, kind of is the Snow content team lead, so oversees a lot of content production, especially as it relates to the athletes they work with. Another brand that's been really huge on the forefront of content creation is Oakley. We're lucky enough to have Maddie Swanson, the Global Director of Action Sports Marketing at Oakley, with us as well. And then also joining us is Pat Crawford, partner at Inkwell. Patrick's got a ton of experience and media background, and also has a great insight as to how brands are integrating and working, and brings kind of a cool, not at a particular brand, but kind of overlooking perspective. So I'm definitely excited to have all you guys on here. So thanks for being around. So I think the first question I want to kind of pose, and maybe start with the brand guys, and then wrap up with you, Patrick, is kind of when did you first realize that content creation was going to be such a significant focus from your brand? Was there a specific moment, like switch went on, or one particular project that stood out that you said, wow, this is something we have to be in?
Yeah, I can take that one away. It's kind of a funny story that Nick Woodman, the CEO of GoPro, tells me a lot. And before I came to GoPro, I was in school and college, and I was creating videos on YouTube. And I got an email from Nick, and he sent me this email, and he's like, what you guys are doing is insane. I was making videos with our ski team and using GoPros, and he asked me if I'd be interested to go up to Mount Hood and test the prototype HD camera. And at the time, and make a video for the brand. And at the time, I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest opportunity in the world. Went up there for a day, filmed, made this edit to music, and synced everything up, and kind of in my style of how I do things. And I sent it to Nick, and this was the first time an edit had been created with the HD camera. And before that, they're standard definition, it wasn't really the same. And he said when he got that video, he put it up on his flat panel TV, and he watched it like 30 times in a row, and by the end he said he was on top of the couch like screaming and jumping with the music. And he said, like, this is what we have to do. We have to create videos like this that inspire people to do the same and film their lives on a GoPro. And yeah, it was a pretty cool experience, and to have him retell that a lot to different people is pretty cool.
It's one of the best how I got my job stories I've ever heard. That's phenomenal. That's a lot. Maddie, how about you guys with Oakley? When did that come in?
Yeah, so when did content matter for the brand of Oakley? It's relevant to snow sports. I'd have to take it back to a project that we worked on with Johnny DeCesare and Poor Boys Productions. It was a film called Session 1242. It has been heralded as one of the better freestyle ski movies of all time, and I was actually thinking about some of my responses, and it's great to see Pat Fujas in the front row here as a participant, because I was recently reading, I think it was in Free Skier, that it was tagged as potentially one of the best free ski segments in skiing movies of all time. So for me, I didn't actually specifically work on that project. From a brand, it really helped us understand that relationships and working with producers and athletes to come together with one kind of master plan could potentially revolutionize or even change the space. For me personally, I'd have to say the Community Project was a movie that we worked on with Travis and Kurt. We did a lot of shooting here at Aspen, so it's something that was very much close to home here for working with Aspen Ski Co. and Derek. And it was actually one of the first films to debut at the meeting 10 years ago.
Nice. Pat, how about from your perspective, was there a moment when the light bulb kind of came on for you and you said, this is...
Yeah, there was. I think for me, the first time I really saw the brand content intersecting with media, which when I was working at Free Skier, that was kind of that intersection, was around 2006, 2007 when the Solomon Free Ski TV series first came out. And it was cool, they did a great job. Mike Douglas worked really hard to leverage all these media partners, and we had pretty detailed reporting that we were passing back to him on how the views were going. And what really struck me then is a tension that I think still is out there now, which is we were partners, and Solomon, worked with us closely on a lot of stuff, but we were also competing with one of our primary advertisers in the sense of people come to our website at freeskier.com at that point in time. What are we going to help them see? Our content or this brand content that is with a partner of ours? And so I remember that really well, and I remember sitting in a lot of meetings seeing how are we going to work through this, and what does this mean for us as a media company, this tension between our own content and content that our advertisers and partners are producing.
And how does that evolve? How did you see that evolve? What was your immediate solution to that?
Well, certainly, I think like all media companies, one of our first reactions was we should be producing some of this stuff in-house ourselves, because we had the staff to do it, and we had the audience trained to get on their computer and type in freeskier.com or whatever your media brand is. So that was one of the things that we tried to start doing, and I think every media house is doing that to some degree right now. But I think it's still a challenge. I mean, clearly, as a brand producing content, working with the media is a huge advantage. They've got people in the habit of consuming media at their site, whereas if you go to a brand site, you might be looking for a product. They don't necessarily always go there thinking, I'm going to go to this product site and look at a video. I think I might be thinking about buying goggles or skis or snowboards or whatever. So the media is important, but that tension is definitely real and something that I think needs to be worked out in each relationship.
Cool. How about Maddie, for a company like Oakley that's such a marketing powerhouse, been for so long, how does content strategy now fit within the overall marketing strategy? Is there a specific kind of percentage of attention it gets and resources now versus where it was, or how are you guys working that out internally?
I think the word content is a little tricky at times, because you've got, from a brand's perspective, you've got a lot of people, and they're looking at what you're going to be doing for the year and looking at your different plans. But there's a lot of buzzwords, right? Like content is king, eyeballs, second screen sharing, all these different kinds of things. So it always seems like these buzzwords are evolving in these strategy meetings. But I would have to answer you, I would say that there is no strategy without content. So whether it's photography or film or movies or product videos or just really compelling story, I really enjoy being able to build all of that, bring it together in a concept, and then present it back to the brand, and kind of give them this whole holistic 360 view of what I feel a brand strategy is based around content.
Excellent. Hey, how about with you guys? I've heard GoPro say, we are a content company, essentially.
It's basically the core of everything we do, and we have a lot of the athlete side of things, and then our media production. And our media production is 70 people now. So we have 70 people in-house creating videos to be launched on the YouTube channel and Xbox and these different distribution networks. But at the end of the day, even all of the athletes, we train the athletes to create content, and it all comes back to the content that's being created and shared. So it's everything that GoPro does. And it works well because it relates directly back to what we sell. So you see a piece of content and it directly inspires somebody to buy a GoPro and do the same.
So with those 70 people, are they more producers taking in content that's coming in from the field, or actually going out, producing and bringing it back?
It's mixed. It's actually, we have two big teams inside of media production, and one half is solely focused on just culling the internet, and it's called our user-generated content team, the UGC team. And they just go on YouTube and find the best stuff and contact those people and say, hey, we'd love to get your content, we'll give you a GoPro, or send them cameras to reshoot the content, better light, better modes, teach them a little bit about how to use the camera. And then we get all of that content in-house and cut it together and cut our own versions. And that's how Fireman Saves Kitten, the Pelican, GoPro on the beak of a pelican, all of those videos come from the UGC side of things. And then on the other side, we've got the core verticals, which I lead the snow team, where we will put together productions with athletes and go out and actually create our own content, and that's the GoPro original production stuff.
Wow, never knows how to get a new Hero 4. They can stop camping outside your hotel room door. Yeah. Can you just hit on a little bit about, I think, the program you guys have as far as educating the athletes into being content producers? Can you just touch on, explain everyone how that works?
Yeah, so we look at our athletes as content creators because what they create is huge for our business and just what they share in their lives. And so we invest a lot in teaching the athletes how to use the cameras and be content creators, which is a lot different probably than a couple of years ago, where you have an athlete to represent your brand and to wear your product. And we view it as much more of just teaching them the best practices and be their own content creators. So it's pretty cool and really different. And Keeping athletes around, it's kind of like the same thing as training a new employee. Like you have an employee and want to see that employee through for the next couple of years because you're investing in them and you're training them and they get the program. And having athletes come through the years, they really tend to excel and learn a lot, and it's really cool to see and having them embrace it as well.
Pat, how about some of the brands you work with? Are you seeing that they're more structured differently now to create more content? Or are they coming to you for advice on that and help on that? Or how are they looking differently than how they were structured in the past?
I think there's definitely some of both. I mean, I think a lot of the companies that we highlight in situations like this have started to bring in a team that really has a lot of time and effort towards producing content, and maybe they bring in somebody who's worked in media and thinks about sort of deadlines and long cycles and all these kinds of things. And then there's a lot of companies that want to get into the media, to creating more content, but they don't have the time and space in-house. And so that's one of the services we try to provide, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, to find those people that are external too that can help do that on a small scale. When you don't have the resources, you have to go full-time. But you need something. You need to plan it. You can't just start producing some content and push it out there and hope for the best. So really putting that strategy and taking time out of your day and out of your annual cycle is really important.
Anyone have any comments or questions to this point? Keeping that interactivity high. No? Okay, I have questions. I keep going. No problem. How about we talk about like storytelling itself? How has it kind of changed based on the distribution opportunities that are out there? Digitally across not just YouTube but all the channels that are there. How has it kind of changed at the core of what you guys are trying to communicate and how you're doing it?
Distribution. That's the good one. So sometimes I use this term internally that we're content rich and distribution poor. So we have all the great stories, we have all the locations and the products and the opportunities and the beautiful images, but a lot of times it's that lack of distribution power. So what we've been able to do is carry off of the campaign messages that we're working on, but then also have a separate group that is working on just brand right content. And what we've been able to do is use that through our athlete messaging points, through our online digital points, and then we also, every once in a while, we'll play around with some long form content as well. So I've been thinking that more of a depth in the sense of distribution has kind of been a good route for our brand, since I work in sports marketing, and then the marketing department is specifically working on just product themselves. And then we have the celebration of athletes and their experiences is where we really tell the root of our stories. So I've chosen more of a, let's see how it kind of lands out there, because for every 20 pieces that we do, maybe one or two really resonate with the viewer.
Do you ever start with a specific distribution channel in mind, or a point when you do certain things? Okay, this would work great for short form or this channel versus other things.
Like it comes to, like you were talking about user generated content, where a lot of that stuff is not necessarily as polished or as fine tuned as maybe what we'll be watching the next couple nights here. And that stuff becomes a bit more shareable. It's quick to market. So we've been doing a fair amount of that right now as well. And I think that the big challenge is really just focusing on pre-production, and that's been the biggest challenge for us, is knowing the strategy, knowing the plan, and knowing your distribution ahead of time, versus we know we need to create this stuff, we have all these great stories, and let's just get it done and get it out there, and then figure out the distribution later. And I think we've had some hiccups along the way, but our great successes have learned from those challenges.
Then Abe, what do you kind of see from the perspective of like good storytelling versus like something perceived as brand propaganda? Do you have a certain philosophy on that, how to keep things authentic?
I mean, our whole media production, our creative director, he's from UCLA Film School. He's a great storyteller, and he really thrives on telling great stories. And that's just what we try to do. It's always a challenge. You have this like quantity versus quality, and it's a big battle internally at GoPro. Like, we have one side that's always telling us like, you just need to create more content, because the more content you create, the more viral hits you're going to get, and like, you'll get 5 firemen saves kittens if you just put 3 videos out a day instead of 1 video out a day. And we always have to push back and say like, no, we need to focus on quality videos, because we tried it. We did a couple months ago we were basically tasked with, we need to triple our content in the next 2 months. And so we were doing 4 videos a week on YouTube, like 1 video a day, except for Friday. And 2 months later, we were doing 3 videos a day, 7 days a week. And we didn't see a triple in viewership, and we actually saw a decline in the amount of people that were engaged, just because there's so much stuff coming out, they can't really focus. So that was definitely an interesting experiment, and then we've since pulled back a little bit.
Nice. Found more of a happy medium right there.
Yeah.
Those two. Nice. So what ways are you, with all of this great stuff you're creating, Matt, when you talked about having so much, being content rich and distribution, channel poor, in what ways are you kind of working with traditional media outlets on distribution? Are there other outlets that have been successful for you to try to open things up?
Yeah, I think I talked about partnerships and relationships early on, and we really strive to strengthen those over the years. And was it about 2 years ago, we extended our deal with the event, the X Games, and within that we added in long form and short form content. So really trying to expand our distribution beyond our core audience and speak to more of the mass appeal audience, which is on the ABC channel. And so we are actually working on that project currently. It's in sound and color right now as we speak. And it's exciting to see what the effects of that is going to be, so that we can continue to look at our model and evolve it over the next couple of years.
Nice. Abe, I know GoPro supports and promotes itself through a lot of traditional and social media angles. So why do you guys see all of those as being important?
Well, we've definitely started out, I think, earlier than probably you would think in television, and that was our CEO, Nick, really wanted to get the word out, and it was basically, back then, he just wanted to show, like, look what our cameras are capable of. And you couldn't really get the same sense on YouTube and maybe not reach the same audience, obviously. But once you would see it on the big screen TV, he thought that people would get inspired, and the TV's been huge for us. But ultimately, YouTube is our main distribution, really. And the whole media landscape is changing. We've got like the whole content side of the business that's just, I'm not even involved in that side of things, but Xbox and Virgin America, and that whole distribution is going to be a crazy thing over the next couple of years.
Nice. Pat, how does that look from where you stand in your perspective, that integration?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find is really important, and whenever we're working with a client on a content project, is they're always going to start with an idea. There's always something, a piece of a story they want to tell, and that's the inspiration that starts the conversation. And you want to encourage that, but we also need to like pause at some point and say, okay, how are we getting this out? How long should these edits be? Is it going to be equally fit for multiple channels or just one? And really take some time to figure that out before you move forward, because the biggest mistake is you finish it, you're excited about it, you put it out, and it just goes nowhere because you didn't really plan all those other pieces up front. And then the other thing that I think is really important is to get as many stakeholders involved in the project as early as they can. So whether that's an athlete and who's got good social following, or it's maybe it's a resort that you're at, or a tourism board that helps promote it. Like, how many people can you get that have some little stake in seeing this thing succeed, and then keep communicating with them all the way up until it's live, so that they're really invested and feel like, now when this thing goes live, I'll promote it through my channels, and then maybe you have 10 people's channels promoting your video or your story instead of just one. Because if you're trying to go it alone, it's really hard to be successful unless you've got the biggest kinds of audiences. GoPro maybe can do that, but most brands need as many partners as possible.
And you can see that a good example is our Hero 4 launch.
Exactly.
We put together, prior to the launch, brought together a bunch of different news outlets and media for a whole media day in Tokyo, London, and San Francisco, and gave them all cameras and had them do activities all day. And then they were writing their stories, so they would all launch the same day that the camera was launched. And then all of the athletes got cameras, I think the morning of the launch. And I think they've got a contest going out that says something about like sharing content, and whoever wins will get some prize. So you see it coming from all angles, and when you really, like, you go through a news feed, at least my news feed, it's just like GoPro, 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 and it's crazy, but it generates that buzz that everybody sees it, and it's all in coordination that worked well with it.
And one of the things you did well with that, and I think is a really important step that's not that hard, it just takes doing it, is writing all that stuff down and communicating it really clearly to everyone who's involved. Here's the link, here's the hashtag, here's the time that it's going to go live. This is what we want you to say roughly. I mean, everyone needs to customize it for their own audience, but if you let every partner kind of take it their own direction, your tracking and your messaging will be so spread out, you know. So the more you can kind of get ahead of that and say, this is how it's going to work, everybody, let's get together, you have more success.
I have to admit, I was surprised by the technical prowess of a lot of your ambassadors reading Kelly Slater tell me all about new shutter speeds and exposures, and I'm like, wow, all these guys really know a lot about cameras. I think they do a good job behind that. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's the unification of a message across a broad spectrum, from media to athletes to in-house to partners, and really planning that out in advance. I think that was a great launch and a great success.
Have any? Oh yes, thank you.
I was wondering, like, what about, you can do it all at once, like everybody one day, but is there any like benefit to like having people like trickle it out for like a week?
Yeah.
Like, tell like your athletes to go this day, some other athletes to go like 2 more days to keep people stoked for a while? Or?
I think that's definitely huge, and I know that they said for everybody to do it at once, but I think it's like an ongoing contest. It's a whole month, and so they want athletes just putting out content every couple days for this whole month, and then just generating the buzz that way. But yeah, that's a huge thing for sure, because there's a lot of, you see the spike of engagement, you release something, and even like a launch of a video, it's a huge spike, and then it just kind of trickles off. But if you can somehow keep that engagement going and a conversation going about it, it'll do good things for sure.
Nice. Yes.
You guys all represent brands. Ultimately, there's got to be some type of revenue generator from that. So the commercial aspects of the business, how does that relate to you guys? And do they come and talk to you and say, sell more cameras, or are you guys free to roam and create your own missions?
I'm not really part of all the business planning aspects of it, but we have a certain budget, and it all obviously relates back to camera sales, but everything that we're doing directly drives camera sales. So it's an easy sell from the business side of things to let us do the things that we want to do, but we have a lot of business objectives that we have to hit, certain key markets, and we've got new verticals that we need to enter into the space, because I mean, like the snow sports industry, everybody knows about GoPro, and so you'll see us creating videos about music, and then you have the core people on GoPro channel saying like, I don't want to watch a music video of some person, I want skiing, and so you have to keep the core happy, and you have to keep these new verticals where you can actually sell a lot more cameras.
I love a good segue. We'll bring that into, actually we'll take a question back there first.
Can you tell us a little about your teams? So how's the team organized? How many people are doing what?
Yeah.
Content creation, I'm more interested in the promotion side, the managing the channel, and how those people roll up.
So
the GoPro and Oakley.
Yeah, so at GoPro, inside of media production, we have I was talking about the UGC team, and then skate and moto, four-wheel, and then we have a team lead in that vertical, and then we've got a production artist who deals with athletes and calling them and making sure they know how to use the cameras. They're filming every month, they're sending in hard drives, and they put together some of the athlete things. And then we've got 2 editors usually that just are editing content within that vertical. And then those verticals, we've got all of those in-house. Oh, cool. Hello. We've got all of those, and then it's pretty much mirrored in the UG. Our content is created, and each of the verticals also has a producer. And then we've got a brand-specific vertical that's for all of the brand-related things. And above that, overseeing all of the different verticals we've got a couple senior production artists. That's one of my jobs, but I'm also filling in for the team lead just because we don't have somebody at the moment. And then above that, we've got the creative director who oversees everything, just creative-wise, and yeah, that's that.
Where does so when you think about putting X content on Instagram and Y content on YouTube, where does that role sit? And then also, does that sit in the verticals, inside the content production, or in some other vertical?
Yeah, that's actually outside of media production. So we focus solely on creating the pieces of content. And then we have a new, I mean, everything's new at GoPro, but we have this new whole division called content distribution. And they deal with getting it out to all the different areas. And I don't even know that they dictate where it goes. We have a different section in marketing that determines where things are going to go and what's going to happen. So we've got like the social team that we have a new camera launch and they want to put different pre-rolls on different social networks, and then the content distribution does the other stuff as well.
Maddie, is that somewhat similar with you guys? How does it work at Oakley? How are you guys?
Yeah, I think it starts in creative, and then creative and brand marketing work together on concept of campaign, and then we'll basically have all that, we'll splinter down all the cross-functional teams of trade marketing, PR, media, sports marketing, a few others, and then ultimately we just work through, we have an in-house production team that will create X amount that they can to their abilities, and then we'll have external pieces that we use with independent directors and producers. And then we've also had in sports marketing more of an athlete alignment production company as well. We've been doing more storytelling and more rich, deep, long form, short form based things based around just the athletes themselves. So kind of starts at the top and then splinters down, splinters down, splinters down a little bit more.
You say you've been adding resources though in that department and adding heads and people. Has it grown?
Yeah, I'd say that the request for content is up exponentially, and that the need for it from us as a brand standpoint has increased as well. And so part of that is the education process internally of really getting everybody up to speed on what it means to do content, how long it takes, the amount of resources that it potentially is going to drain on the brand, and if we're going to be doing this, what are we not going to be able to do over here? So I think that it's difficult to add as much headcount as you probably want, but that's where you really start to reduce the amount of things that you're doing to focus on the big win. So have less stories resonate farther.
Very cool.
I think one of the things that TA was probably getting at too is at some point within your content production team, a person or a team needs to do that, measure and iterate pieces of the puzzle. Otherwise you're just publishing, which is good and that's important, but somebody needs to be looking at the stats every day and saying, oh, okay, well this didn't work very well on Twitter. Why is that? What can we do? And you can't lose track of that position as you're just like pumping out stuff as fast as you can and lose those learnings.
Right, and a great area to be able to do that with all the digital analytics, be able to follow that stuff. So we're kind of getting toward that. The question you mentioned earlier, it all comes back down to selling cameras, really for GoPro. You know, at Oakley, there's a similar mission end of the day, selling product, you know, goggles, glasses, apparel. So let's get in and talk a little bit about how, as brands, you measure that ROI and justification for putting all this time and energy into this. I mean, at the end of the day, someone's looking at the P&L and all this and saying, hey, it's worth as cool as it is. You know, it's got to be worth something and pay off something. How are you guys looking at that right now?
It's not my huge expertise in regards to ROI because I'm a spender. But I would say that the metrics are definitely helping through the social media channels. We're able to see upticks on our website. We're able to see upticks in product sales when we actually are out promoting something with an athlete or doing a specific event. And I think a lot of it is instinctually as well. So as much as you want to be married to the numbers, part of me really feels that content creation is about the passion and the feeling as well, about really having conversations and just kind of thinking through what's going to be best for the audience, what's going to be best for the brand, and what's going to be best for the partnership overall. So it's a tricky world of content. It's always going to be ever changing in the universe that we live in now. And I think that the challenge for all of us is to continue to feed our passions, feed the excitement around what we're doing so that it does grow within the industry of snow, and that we can potentially continue to do this for a long, long time. So.
So I know some of the more sophisticated,
Started that slightly.
yeah, a little bit. That's all right. We'll get back. But I know some of the sophisticated retailers in the industry will tell you, we get X amount of views, will equal X amount of conversions down the line. Are you guys set up that way? Abe, do you have that look, or are you more just like let's make great stuff and let someone else instead figure it out?
There's been a lot of attempts at analytics in terms of views, and it's hard to measure obviously for what we do, but we also have a whole POP, point of purchase display, and all of them. I'm sure you've seen them in ski shops and Best Buys where we have the content playing, and that's a huge investment. The investment on that is way bigger than our media budget at all, but that directly relates to the camera sales, so I think that's a huge portion of it.
Mm-hmm. It feels like it's a movement almost as well within ROI, right? So if you're able to move your brand or your message or your trending on what it is that you're focused on, then to me that feels like that's something that you can, sell uphill in regards to getting more budget or doing more projects. Is that not only did we hit numbers, we were decent in analytics, we had some uptick in sales, but we actually were able to move an audience or potentially engage in a new one, which is a challenge right now with the digital media being very cluttered, is to look at how we can acquire new voices and new loyalists. Mm-hmm.
I think it's important on the ROI side too to think about those aspects before you publish the content. So content is not like one thing. It's not like every piece of content you have has the same goal. So as you sit down in your plan and you say, look, this piece is just kind of fun. It's a contest or it's an infographic. And this one's this really soulful, inspirational thing, and that's going to do what it does. That's to generate new fans. And this one's sort of an educational piece. GoPro had an educational video about the new camera, as well as these like really high production value ones. And then the last ones are the ones that really do have that direct link back to your e-commerce so you can track it. So when you look at your ROI, you're looking at it as a whole. And some of those pieces of content aren't going to drive sales, but this other one that has the ask at the end, you can, and then it's pretty easy. Then you're just tracking, into your sales funnel and your e-commerce, and you go all the way through on that.
And so how about if the monetization's a little, beyond the scope of this talk, how about from, kind of taking from TA's presentation, how are we analyzing the actual content and tweaking that? I know we spent a lot of time doing that at Transworld. I love when they tell me, hey Rob, that interview with the CEO you spent 6 hours on didn't get as many views as the press release about new headphones. It's always nice for my ego. I love how that goes. But it happens that way. That the idea of constantly measuring and evaluating and tweaking, is that a centralized team, or is that something that everyone is kind of ingrained in doing? Like, how big a role do analytics play in what you guys do on a daily basis?
That's a complete team. That is their expertise. That's what they do on a daily basis for the brand, and I think that we've had great learnings from those analytics, but I think at the same time we don't want to live and die by them, because if then you start to change all of your content based on the analytics that you're getting, meaning that if you have front logos in your video for more than 9 seconds, you're going to get 11 seconds of them watching and then they're gone. So it's about having the viewer retain, right? So having them watch the whole video is the goal, and then potentially, is there a call to action in the end? Is there something that we want them to potentially do? So I see the analytics, but I'm just fighting against them personally because I want to use them as a tool. But I also feel that the spirit of the content and the story, if it's right and if it's strong enough, it will be shared and it will get to where it needs to be. So speaking with more passion on that.
Yes, in the back.
You said something about content being so cluttered. You guys have a strategy on how to stand above that clutter, and is anyone telling that? I know you kind of just touched on that, but
Yeah, great question. So the question is how do we stand above the clutter in the crowded space, which has been talked a lot about in digital and also in content, because now with user-generated content potentially getting more views than a lot of the beautiful imagery that we're working on and being really proud of, is that I think that the less is more concept is definitely being put across most brands, and that there's a lot more being put into how it's going to be distributed and how we're actually going to get it out there. So I think that, if you spitball 20 ideas, then we should probably maybe come down to just a couple and really put more effort in there, because what we're finding, and I think this echoes what Gabe was saying, is that you can invest X amount of dollars into 20 projects, but you're not potentially going to get as much return out of it that you're wanting. But if you present that same amount of money towards maybe 2 or 3 projects, you're going to potentially get more life, more share, and I think more excitement around the brand. And in the end, it's less of a drain on resources. And that's something that I'm continuing trying to work around, is how can I continue to create content but not drain resources, so that when we're done or a timeline changes or things shift, then that shifts the entire brand as well. So we're able to have a little bit more flexibility and we're nimble to do it.
Yeah.
Can you guys each give an example of something recent piece of content that you've been involved with that worked, that was great, and why it worked? And was it because the content was great, or was it because of some other strategy? You know, maybe Abe, start with a. I'm curious, you know, what's one of the best GoPro videos ever, and why did it succeed?
One of the content pieces I was looking at recently was the lion hug video, and that's a 15-minute video of the guy that he's like the lion whisperer, and that was one of our Hero 3 Plus launch stories. And after the Hero 3 Plus, we typically just went out and shot a highlight video just to get shots. And last year we said, okay, an initiative is we want to do some better storytelling. So each of the Hero 3 Plus launch video is going to be seen as a trailer for each of these stories, which released 2 weeks apart, like a couple months after or up until a couple months after the video launched. And that piece of content has 21 million views. And a lot of people were worried that like the moment in the video where it's like the viral moment is when the lion comes up and hugs the guy. And a lot of the people at GoPro were like, well, that's our viral piece of content. Like, just share that piece. And this 15-minute video, people aren't going to see it. And what ended up happening is we launched that piece of content as well. So we have a 1 minute and 30-second piece of content of just the lion hug. And that video got 3 million views. And the 15-minute piece got 21 million views. And so it was a testament that if you really put passion and storytelling into these pieces, like, it's an emotional connection with the viewers, and that goes so much far beyond just getting a piece of viral content.
Best edit for me is working with Bob Burnquist on a series called Bob Burnquist Dreamland series. And this was a collaboration between myself and the skate team manager at Oakley, just having a conversation of what are the things that we can do with our athletes to bring their ideas to the table, which potentially might already have existing footage. They already maybe have something in the can that they've just been looking for a brand or someone to help them get it out there and polish it. And so we talked to Bob, and he'd been working on a video part for over 2 years. And you know, in skateboarding, that's pretty standard. In ski and snowboard, we're mostly down to the one year video parts. And he had over 30 minutes of A-grade footage, right? And so we were working with him, we were talking to him, and said, what if we were able to get this down to like 8 minutes maybe, right? Like, please, 8 minutes, right? So we're, you know, trying to get shorter. He's like, just the uncompromising view of the athlete telling the, you know, the very large brand, you're wrong. This is what's going to resonate with the consumer, and this is what's going to resonate with my fans. We do it this way or the highway. So it was incredible to be in that kind of partnership with an athlete in a content piece of where we do need to take a risk with this. We do need to learn potentially from this, and it's actually the most watched video that we have right now. And then the series that we did with it as well. And it's what we all love. It's action, and it's gnarly tricks, and it's things that you would never see yourself ever doing on a skateboard or any kind of physical board, but it makes you appreciate it and go, man, that guy's a super freak, and I want to talk about it, and I want to share it, because it gave me this emotion of I would never do it, or I would love to do it, or that guy's so crazy, like I got to show my buddy and tag him. And it worked for us, and it came from just a conversation of what can we do better.
I'm going to go with one that's kind of different from your two examples, and one of the clients that we work with is the Mountain Collective Pass that includes Aspen and a bunch of resorts, 7 destinations, and it's got a small social audience that's rapidly growing, but it can't really carry numbers on its own very well yet with a relatively small group. So we've been going through and designing content that's small and tactical, not nearly at the scale that you guys are talking about, but very specifically targeted at particular athletes. So we'll go in and say, okay, you know, Jackson Hole is one of the destinations. These are the athletes that are at Jackson Hole. We can put together, you know, photography with little design messages around it and include certain athletes and reach straight out to the athlete and say, if we get this up on Mountain Collective, can, you know, be sure that we can get a share out of this athlete, and maybe even their friends, like, hey, congrats to my buddy, this other athlete. And by doing that with a couple of those, we've been able to reach audiences audiences that are many times the size of the total Mountain Collective athlete or the total Mountain Collective fan base, just by making sure that we knew we had at least one big lever in place before the content went live.
Mark, do you have something?
Yeah, at the GoPro Athlete Summit, you guys put up a social media dashboard for all the athletes.
Yeah.
How did the athletes react to it, seeing how they were ranked compared to everyone else? What are you guys going to do with that analytics afterwards?
Yeah, so that was a really cool thing where at the Athlete Summit, we brought all our athletes to Hawaii. We had this live dashboard that had the rankings of like who has the most socially engaged post, who has the, and who's being talked about the most and all that stuff. And it was really cool to see the athletes and some of the other athletes, more traditional media guys that were looking at like, holy cow, this like 14-year-old skateboarder is beating me 10-1 in my social engagement. And it was a really interesting thing to see. I'm not really sure what sort of, I'm not really involved in the sports marketing side of things, but I know that they look at the analytics and utilize them. But I think the athletes were, they liked seeing it at least. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Just to follow, I know you're not directly involved in it, but do you help the athletes to figure that out? So the guy who says, oh, wow, the skateboarder is doing that, like, what should I do?
Yeah.
To build my own brand, and do you help them both with the content, but also the tactical aspects of it?
Yeah, so I'm less involved on the tactics. Our social media tries to do a lot of, or our social media team tries to do a lot of helping them and teaching them. And at our Athlete Summit, a whole little panel conference was just about how to get your engagement up and how to reach the audience that you want to reach. So we're definitely teaching that. And then on the media side of things, we're on the phone with them, teaching them just best modes to use and how to create the content that they want to create.
And I think while we're engaging with the athletes and working with them on the tagging and the social media and the promotion of the products or the campaigns, we really try to find a way to do it through their voice as well, if possible, because a lot of the pushback that you'll get from a professional athlete is they don't want to alienate their fan base. And I think that's probably true for a lot of the brands and producers here today is to stay true to what you stand for, but also you have endorsements, and there are things that are going to need to be done on behalf of the brands that help you do the things that you do. And I think that's that fine line that I think that social media is still kind of working its way through of how do you want to consume your content, how will you share that, and then what's the best way for the brands to activate and engage in that manner. Ever-growing struggle for sure.
Maddie, are those social metric numbers part of your athletes' incentive contracts currently? Are there certain numbers and payouts based on those kind of things?
I'll say that there are a lot of kickers within athlete endorsements, and I would say that performance, exposure, and now in the recent years, social media engagement are definitely things that we focus on.
Cool. To know. Yes.
Rob mentioned their new series called Branded, which I think is just fascinating. How do you guys, as companies, view that type of show? And obviously some of you have been on there. And does that help resonate with the consumer without a different way of content? And do you look at that as being favorable? And again, you can tell a story about how you do it, why you're there, and just attributes to your businesses.
I felt a little out of the loop because I hadn't seen it before. When I saw it, I was immediately contacting our media person, asking, have you been talking to your contact at Outside about this opportunity for us? And I'm sure they have. It just hasn't maybe come my way. And I think it's a great way to show what you stand for and the things that you do behind your products, and how you make them, how you stand behind them, where you make them, and how the biggest thing is how you differentiate yourself from the pack. I think it's a great program, and I'm excited to continue that conversation over the next couple of days.
Since we've been talking a lot on the athlete front, you know, maybe I just want to kind of put out there, and any of you can jump in and talk about this one, kind of a bit of a dynamic shift we've seen from, you know, brands traditionally promoting athletes to now, you know, athletes spending so much time promoting brands. How other than what we've already talked about, you know, what other ways are you reacting to that dynamic and kind of dealing with that situation, or maybe something you've seen there, Pat, what other companies have done?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the things that we're seeing out there is that, you know, these athletes now, it's certainly in skiing, which is the sport that I know the closest, like being on a podium is important, and that's a great thing, but it's not, it doesn't define your career to the degree that maybe it once did or it could in other sports, certainly in the ski industry. And so a lot of what defines an athlete's value is being essentially like a one-person media company. And they may have reached this point by being really good at skiing or snowboarding or skateboarding, whatever it is, but they do need to really make sure that they make that pivot in their mind of, like, I am a one-person media company, and I need to treat sort of my business in that respect.
And the challenge with asking an athlete to be an ambassador and a promotional part of a brand is that they are not necessarily an actor, right? In most sense, they are the best at what they do in skiing or snowboarding in a sport. And if I look at all the people around the room, I'm just checking out Danny right here is a digital expert in distribution, right? And Pep is an expert in skiing and promoting himself as being one of the best skiers in this world, right? And I think all the people around here is like, how do we take the best out of everyone and collectively make a grand story, right? So if I put that back on the athlete and I say, yes, I'm going to challenge you to learn and evolve and become more of a brand ambassador versus the brands doing everything we can to promote your brand, let's find the synergy in between those two. And really, in the end, from my standpoint, it is about promoting brand, but I do like to support the athlete and make sure that we're ensuring their goals are successful and they're getting there, if not exceeding them.
Cool. I know we're coming up on time, so I want to save the last question for someone in the audience. Someone want to hit up with one more if we can wrap with? Big pressure, I know, the final question. So it's got to be a great one now. Yes, take her.
For a monetization of content, you guys are racking up tens of millions of views. Is your job and your goal as a company just to put your message and put your content out there? Or are you seeking to generate income either through YouTube monetization or other revenue streams?
Yeah, it's our job inside of media is to create content, great content, and put it out there. Outside of media production, they're obviously, we have investors now who are looking for this other side of the revenue stream. So it's not just camera sales, it's the content business. And so that's coming from the outside in, and like obviously we don't like to have ads in the front of our videos, but it's just the nature of how the company is going. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, again, these guys will be around for the remainder of the meeting, so thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you guys everyone?